You gave Alex the company? I asked, barely able to keep my voice steady. Without even telling me? My father, seated behind his massive oak desk, didn't flinch. He flipped through a stack of papers, barely sparing me a glance. He's the son, Sophia. It's his role to take over. The room seemed to close in around me. I gripped the back of the chair in front of me, trying to steady myself. His role? I echoed, my voice rising. Papa, I've spent years preparing for this. I know the business inside and out. Alex he doesn't care about the company like I do. Sophia, he said, his tone calm but final, this isn't about caring. It's about tradition, and tradition says the son takes over. My name is Sophia Ramirez, and I'm 28 years old. For as long as I can remember, my father has been the most important figure in my life, stern but fair, as long as you stayed within the boundaries of his expectations. He built our family's import-export business from nothing, and I grew up watching him pour his heart and soul into making it a success. By the time I was 15, I knew I wanted to be a part of it. Not just a part, I wanted to lead it one day. I worked for that dream tirelessly. I graduated with honors, earned a degree in finance, and spent countless hours shadowing my father at work. I took on internships that gave me hands-on experience in logistics and operations, and I even started proposing changes to improve efficiency. My father always nodded approvingly at my ideas, saying things like, "You're sharp, Sophia. You'd make a great CFO one day." The CFO line stung every time. It was a compliment, sure, but it was also a boundary. No matter how hard I worked, how much I knew, or how passionate I was, he never once said, "You'd make a great CEO," because that role was reserved for Alex, my younger brother. Alex and I couldn't be more different. Where I was driven and disciplined, Alex was charming but lazy. He breezed through school with mediocre grades, more interested in soccer practice and late-night parties than studying. When he joined the family business, he treated it like a side gig, a fallback option in case his real dreams didn't pan out. He'd come in late, leave early, and spend most of his time scrolling through his phone or chatting with friends in the office. Despite this, my father adored him. "He just needs time to grow into his role," he'd say whenever I pointed out Alex's lack of effort. "He's still young." It was infuriating, but I kept telling myself that my work would speak for itself. That one day my father would see what I was capable of and reconsider. But now, standing in his office, hearing him dismiss me with the wave of a hand, I realized I'd been fooling myself. The announcement of Alex's promotion spread quickly through the company. My colleagues, who had come to respect my work over the years, offered me awkward smiles and whispered words of sympathy. Even the employees who liked Alex looked uneasy. It was clear to everyone that he wasn't ready for this responsibility. I tried to focus on my current projects, but the frustration and resentment gnawed at me. Every time Alex made a mistake or brushed off a meeting, I felt my blood boil. He didn't even seem to care about the company's success. He was just going through the motions, secure in the knowledge that the role had been handed to him on a silver platter. It all came to a head one afternoon when I overheard a heated conversation between Alex and one of our senior managers. I was walking past the conference room when I heard raised voices. "Alex, this shipment delay is going to cost us thousands," the manager said, his tone exasperated. "We need to address this now." "I'm working on it," Alex replied, his voice defensive. "It's not that big of a deal." "Not that big of a deal?" the manager shot back. "Do you even understand the implications? We're going to lose a major client if this isn't resolved." I peeked inside to see Alex slouched in his chair, avoiding the manager's gaze. My heart sank. This wasn't just about tradition or favoritism anymore. Alex's inexperience and lack of commitment were putting the entire company at risk. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table, my laptop open in front of me. I'd pulled up the company's financial reports, client contracts, and logistics records, trying to get a clearer picture of the situation. The deeper I dug, the worse it looked. Delays, lost accounts, oversights. Alex was driving the company into the ground, and my father was too blinded by tradition to see it. I closed my laptop and leaned back in my chair, rubbing my temples. The thought of confronting my father again filled me with dread, but I knew I couldn't stay silent. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about the future of the business, the people who worked there, and the legacy my father had built. Taking a deep breath, I picked up my phone and called Elena, my former professor and closest confidant. "I need your advice," I said when she answered. "I think I'm about to start a fight I can't win." "Good," she said without missing a beat. "That means it's worth fighting for." The business's struggles became impossible to ignore. Within weeks of Alex taking over, delayed shipments and missed deadlines had started piling up. The company's once pristine reputation was now being whispered about in industry circles, and loyal clients were quietly exploring other options. My father, ever the optimist where Alex was concerned, continued to excuse his mistakes. "He's learning, Sophia," my father said one evening at dinner, his tone dismissive. "These things take time." "How much time, Papa?" I shot back, unable to keep the frustration out of my voice. "Do you even realize how many accounts we've lost this month? Or how close we are to losing one of our biggest clients?" Alex, seated across from me, rolled his eyes. "Relax, Sophia. I've got it under control." My hands tightened around my fork. "Under control? Like the shipment to Valencia last week? Or the contract renewal you forgot to send?" Okay, my father interjected, his voice stern. "That's enough. We're not going to fix this over dinner." I bit my tongue, pushing back the words I wanted to say. The tension at the table was suffocating, but my father's stubbornness was worse. He wouldn't listen. Not yet. That night, I called Elena. She picked up on the second ring, her no-nonsense tone instantly calming me. "How bad is it?" she asked. "Worse than I thought," I admitted, pacing the length of my living room. "Alex is completely in over his head, and my father refuses to see it. He's too blinded by this whole tradition nonsense to realize the business is falling apart." "And what are you going to do about it?" Elena asked, her question sharp and direct. I paused, the words catching in my throat. "I don't know. What can I do? My father's made it clear he doesn't think I belong in the top seat. Even if I confront him, he'll just dismiss me again." Elena sighed. "Sophia, you're the most capable person I know. You've spent years preparing for this, and you're going to let a little stubbornness stop you?" "It's not little," I said bitterly. "It's decades of it." "So prove him wrong," she said simply. "Don't wait for him to hand you the reins. Show him why you're the one who should be running the company." Her words stayed with me long after we ended the call. Prove him wrong. It sounded simple enough, but the thought of taking on my father, of challenging everything he believed, felt like an impossible mountain to climb. The next week at work, things hit a breaking point. I was in the office, finalizing a report, when one of the sales managers, Carlos, knocked on my door. "Sophia," he said, stepping inside. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" I nodded, gesturing for him to sit. "What's going on?" "It's Alex," he said, his voice low. "He's struggling. He missed another client meeting this morning, and when I tried to follow up, he said it wasn't a big deal. But it is a big deal, Sophia. That client is one of our biggest accounts." I closed my laptop, leaning forward. "Does Papa know?" Carlos hesitated. "I tried to bring it up last week, but he brushed it off. I think he's hoping Alex will just figure it out." I sighed, the weight of the situation pressing down on me. "Thank you for telling me, Carlos. I'll handle it." After he left, I sat in silence, staring at the reports on my desk. I couldn't sit by and watch the company crumble. If my father wouldn't listen to reason, I'd have to make him. Over the next few days, I threw myself into preparing. I combed through every aspect of the company, financial reports, client feedback, operational bottlenecks, and built a comprehensive plan to address the issues. It wasn't just about pointing out Alex's failures. It was about showing a clear path forward, one that I was uniquely qualified to lead. Elena reviewed my plan during one of our late-night calls. "This is solid, Sophia," she said, her tone impressed. "You've covered every angle." "Thanks," I said, though my stomach still churned with nerves. "But will it be enough? You know how my father is." "Forget about what he'll say," Elena said firmly. "This isn't just about him. It's about the company, the people who work there, and the future you want to build. Go in there and own it." With my plan finalized, I decided to call a family meeting. If I was going to confront my father, I wanted Alex there too. He needed to hear this just as much as my father did. The night before the meeting, I barely slept. My mind raced with every possible outcome. My father dismissing me again, Alex lashing out, the plan falling apart. But deep down, I knew I didn't have a choice. If I didn't act now, the company might not survive. As I walked into the dining room the next evening, my heart pounded in my chest. My father and Alex were already seated, their expressions a mix of curiosity and impatience. I took a deep breath, clutching the folder in my hands. "Thank you for coming," I said, my voice steady despite the nerves coursing through me. "I need to talk to you both about the company, and I need you to listen." The dining room felt more like a battlefield than a family space that evening. My father sat at the head of the table, as he always did, his expression stoic. Alex slouched in his chair, scrolling through his phone until my father shot him a sharp look. I stood at the other end, clutching the folder of documents that contained my plan, feeling a mix of nerves and determination. "Well, Sophia," my father said, breaking the silence. "You called this meeting. Let's hear it." I took a deep breath and opened the folder. "I've been reviewing the company's performance over the past few months," I began, my voice steady. "And it's clear that we're heading toward a crisis. Shipments are delayed, clients are leaving, and our reputation is suffering. If we don't take immediate action, we could lose everything." My father's brow furrowed, but he didn't interrupt. Alex, however, let out a derisive laugh. "Come on, Sophia, it's not that bad. You're blowing this out of proportion." I turned to him, my gaze unwavering. "Alex, we've lost 3 major clients in the last month. One of them had been with us for over a decade. Does that sound like nothing to you?" His smirk faltered, but he didn't respond. I placed a report in front of my father, pointing to the highlighted sections. "This is the financial impact of those losses. And this," I said, pulling out another document, "is the feedback from clients who've left. They all say the same thing: poor communication, missed deadlines, and lack of leadership." My father's face darkened as he read through the reports. "Why haven't I seen these before?" he asked, his voice tight. "Because no one wants to upset you," I said, meeting his gaze. "Everyone is afraid to tell you the truth, Papa. But I'm not." He leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "And what is this truth, Sophia?" "That Alex isn't ready for this role," I said bluntly. "And if we keep pretending he is, we'll lose the business." Alex shot up from his chair, his face red. "This is ridiculous. You've always been jealous because I'm the one in charge and you're not. Just admit it, Sophia." "Jealous?" I said, my voice rising. "You think I want to be in charge so I can stroke my ego? This isn't about me, Alex. It's about the company. It's about the employees who rely on us for their livelihoods. It's about preserving what Papa spent his whole life building." Alex fell silent, his hands clenched at his sides. My father watched us both, his expression unreadable. For a moment, I thought I'd gone too far, but I pressed on. "I'm not saying this to hurt you, Alex," I said, softening my tone. "But you know as well as I do that you're not ready for this, and that's okay. No one's blaming you for that. But if we don't act now, it'll be too late." I turned back to my father, sliding a folder across the table. "This is my plan," I said. "It addresses the problems we're facing: improving communication with clients, streamlining operations, and regaining the trust we've lost. I've mapped out the steps we need to take and how we can implement them immediately." He opened the folder, flipping through the pages in silence. I could see the tension in his jaw, the conflict playing out in his mind. When he finally looked up, his eyes were tired but sharp. "This is a good plan," he admitted. "But leadership isn't just about plans, Sophia. It's about responsibility." "And I've been responsible my entire life," I said, my voice steady. "You know that. You've seen how much I care about this business, how hard I've worked. I've earned this, Papa. All I'm asking for is a chance to prove it." The room was silent for what felt like an eternity. My father stared at me, his gaze heavy with the weight of decades of tradition and expectations. Finally, he turned to Alex. "What do you think?" he asked. Alex looked stunned. "What do I think? You're seriously considering this?" "I am," my father said quietly. "Because Sophia's right. This business can't survive if we keep going the way we are." Alex opened his mouth to argue but stopped himself. He sank back into his chair, his shoulders slumping. "Fine," he muttered. "Let her do it." My father turned back to me, his expression solemn. "You'll have your chance, Sophia," he said. "But understand this, it won't be easy. You'll need to prove yourself every step of the way." I nodded, my heart pounding. "I understand, Papa, and I won't let you down." That night, as I left the dining room, I felt a strange mix of emotions: relief, pride, and a lingering sense of uncertainty. I'd won the battle, but the war was far from over. The real work was just beginning. The following weeks were a whirlwind. Stepping into a leadership role meant long hours, tough decisions, and constantly proving myself, not just to my father, but to the entire company. My first order of business was meeting with the department heads to address the chaos Alex had left behind. They were wary at first, their skepticism evident in the way they hesitated to speak freely. But as I listened to their concerns and implemented quick, effective solutions, the mood began to shift. Slowly but surely, trust was being rebuilt. At home, things were more complicated. My father's demeanor was a mixture of pride and unease. He had spent his whole life believing that leadership was a man's role, and while he was starting to see the truth, old habits didn't die easily. One evening I found him sitting in his study, staring at a photo of the family from years ago. "You've done well, Sophia," he said, not looking up. The words caught me off guard. "Thank you, Papa," I said softly. He set the photo down and met my gaze. "I should have seen it sooner. You're more than capable. I've always known that. But it's hard to change how you've seen the world your whole life." I nodded, understanding the weight of his words. "It's not just about you changing, Papa. It's about what's best for the company and for our family." He gave a small, reluctant smile. "I see that now?" Alex, on the other hand, was a different story. For the first few days after I took over, he barely showed his face around the office. When I finally cornered him in the break room, he looked uncomfortable, avoiding my eyes as he grabbed his coffee. "You don't have to hide, Alex," I said gently. "This isn't about you failing. It's about putting the company first." He sighed, leaning against the counter. I feel like I let everyone down, especially Dad." "You didn't let anyone down," I said. "You were put in a position you weren't ready for. That's not your fault." He looked at me, his expression softening. "You really mean that?" "Of course I do. You have so many strengths, Alex. Leadership just isn't one of them, and that's okay. It doesn't make you any less valuable." For the first time in years, we talked openly about the pressure he'd felt, the mistakes he'd made, and the weight of expectations. By the end of the conversation, I could tell he felt lighter, even if he wasn't quite ready to admit it. As the weeks turned into months, the company began to stabilize. We regained 2 major clients and implemented new systems to prevent the kind of mismanagement that had caused the earlier chaos. My father started attending fewer meetings, trusting me to handle the day-to-day operations. Even Alex found his place, taking on a role in marketing where his creativity and charisma could shine without the burden of leadership. At night, as I sat in my office reviewing the day's work, I often felt a mix of relief and exhaustion. The journey had been anything but easy, but for the first time in my life, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be. 6 months later, the business was unrecognizable, in the best way. Systems were running smoothly, client relationships were stronger than ever, and the morale among employees had visibly improved. I'd worked hard to rebuild the trust that had been fractured, and the results were starting to show. Every success, big or small, felt like a validation, not just of my leadership, but of my worth. For the first time, I felt truly confident in my role. The doubt that had haunted me for years, the feeling that I needed to prove myself, was fading. I knew I belonged here. Every decision I made, every problem I solved, solidified that belief. It wasn't about pleasing my father or outshining Alex anymore. It was about doing what I loved and doing it well. My father had changed too. He no longer hovered over my decisions or questioned my judgment. Instead, he asked for updates with genuine curiosity and offered advice only when I sought it out. One afternoon, he stopped by my office, a rare visit these days. "I was going through the old client records," he said, leaning against the doorframe. "You brought back a client we lost 5 years ago. I couldn't do that, but you did." I smiled, feeling a warmth I hadn't expected. "Thanks, Papa. It wasn't easy, but I knew it was worth it." He nodded, his expression softening. "I'm proud of you, Sophia. You've done more for this company than I ever could have imagined." Hearing those words from him, after everything we'd been through, was more satisfying than I could have hoped. It wasn't just about the business anymore. It was about his respect, something I'd spent my whole life chasing. Alex was thriving too, in his own way. He'd embraced his role in marketing, using his creativity and natural charm to bring fresh ideas to the company. He even started pitching new campaigns to me during our meetings, and while we didn't always agree, there was a new sense of collaboration between us. For the first time, we weren't competing. We were working together. At home, things felt lighter. Family dinners were no longer filled with tension, and my father had started asking about my ideas and plans, listening in a way he never had before. Even my mother, who had always stayed quiet during these debates, began chiming in with encouragement and praise. One evening, as I walked through the office after hours, I stopped by the conference room and looked out at the view of the city lights. This was my company now. Not because it had been handed to me, but because I'd earned it. I thought about the girl I'd been 6 months ago, angry, overlooked, and unsure of her place. That girl was gone. In her place was someone stronger, more confident, and unafraid to fight for what she deserved. This was just the beginning. There were more challenges ahead, more mountains to climb, but I knew I could face them. The company was thriving, my family was healing, and I was finally living the life I'd always envisioned, not by chance, but by choice. As I turned off the lights and locked the office for the night, I felt a deep sense of peace. This wasn't just my victory, it was my future, and I couldn't wait to see what came next.